Hoseo.
Hoseo.
Cherokee greeting. And we're going to start off with Native American, Indian country today. So you can look over here at this shield here. And this picture of the Laya Chavez. And this is from Indian Country Today that I subscribe to. The notice is, Leah Chavez has dreamt of being on a television news program since her childhood. Now her dream is coming true. She is now the anchor of Indian Country Today's newscast. The news organization announced Tuesday at the Indian Gaming Trade Show and Convention in Las Vegas, Nevada. Quote, "When I got the news that I was chosen to be the permanent anchor of Indian Country Today, I was over the moon. So excited," she said. "As a young girl growing up on a reservation, I never dreamed this would be possible. But I dreamt and worked, and here we are." So it's really important to see this taking place in Indian country, seriously. So, behold, Alea there. Now let me go on with this theme. I'm mainly focusing on the ancient Mediterranean, and let me start it off this way. History, everybody's heard the word history. History is really his story. And who is he of the story? He is the father, the patriarchy. And the patriarchy and the perpetration of it into the future. And a projection of it into the past. And his story is served by historical proof. Proof of the universal male dominance, which confirms the inevitability of its present social arrangements and gender relationships. Conversely, however, it challenges other stories to reveal ideals that are more inclusive, just, harmonious, and free of gender bias. And for me, I am illustrating her story, and mainly focusing on the Mediterranean, ancient Mediterranean, where her story really went on for a very, very long time. As far as I know, nothing of it any longer exists. But certainly all that had been there in the ancient Mediterranean at the same time has continued to this day in India. But my focus here is on these things of the ancient Mediterranean. So we can focus on the shield of her here. People sometimes think of the ancient world around the Mediterranean as godless. If anything, this world enjoyed an embarrassing surplus of objects of religious veneration over the centuries, including an awesome lineup of Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, deified emperors and empresses, the women-oriented Isis cult, plus sun worshippers, Jews, Gnostics, Eleusinian mysteries, and the followers of the Way, a very latter-day sect labeled Christian around 300 AD. Spiritually, there was something for everyone who lived in the lands around the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. The visible representatives of the holy were mostly women, women who carried out a wide range of religious and civic duties and were paid in money, property, and their names and tenures served as chronologies. Certain priestesses had to be virgins. Others were married citizens chosen for their high moral standards. Married or not, religious leaders became role models and communities, celebrities in their own right. The lives of these women typified the variety of Greek religious careers, starting with Lesbiaci, who was a high priestess of the Athena Polias, the most important religious figure in Athens. She held her office for a record of 64 years. Married, she lived to see 4 generations of descendants. The comic playwright Aristophanes used her leadership qualities and high-profile example as the model for the female lead in his play La Estrada, which is still being shown today. Another woman here about 2,000 years ago, Melitene, became a priestess of the goddess Cybele. And recently, in modern times, her portrait has been found showing her during that time, and that's who we're looking at here. This is the portrait of her. She was the priestess of Cybele. Now, Cybele, also pronounced in English or Roman, as Cybele. Also, just a little sideline, the people in this country that the English Americans and their Spanish called Zuni Indians are in reality the Cybele. The Cybele are the devotees and the followers of Cybele. They have come from the eastern Mediterranean, and then they lived in Libya in North Africa, and then they immigrated here to New Mexico, and they are known as the Cybele. The Spanish and the English Americans have made them into American Indians. And then we have another priestess of Demeter, Architomia. She was, she could even get your seats on the 20-yard line in the Olympic Games, because during the Olympic Games, the only place of honor was the priestess. Her special seat was just opposite of the judges. Architomia was also the only married woman allowed to see the Olympics, because only unmarried women were allowed. However, that was something that they always kept going as a custom, we would say. So it gives you a little bit of start here. Now if we can go down here to this figure here. And with this figure, I am using this as a representative of a woman, a mortal woman who was born in, I don't know, 2,500 years ago, I guess, just prior to the classical period, about 400 BC. Her name is Farini, and she was born in rural Greece, Theosope, and she immigrated to Athens. Athens in those days was like Hollywood, like going to Hollywood. And she went to Hollywood, that is Athens. She was, a very lovely figure. Everything about her was so beautifully feminine. And beauty in the Greeks' view was divine. And the whole thought for the classical sculptures that we see, beauty, it's all about divine as beauty, you could put it that way. And so she immigrated there and became an artist's model. And basically she became the Marilyn Monroe of ancient Athens, like that. A famous painter there of that city, Apollos, he did a painting of her, of Aphrodite rising from the waves. The painting hasn't survived, but curiously, in the 15th century it was here in Europe, the Florentine painter Botticelli did just that theme, and that theme of Aphrodite rising from the waves, was and is the most famous painting of the Renaissance period. So very, very interestingly. But Farini was also very good, had a very good business head as well as a great figure. And one of the things that she did was that after she made a lot of money, she commissioned us another statue to made of her. Oh, the first statue, that's what I would say. Actually, the first statue was commissioned by the city council of Canidos. And jumping a little bit ahead, But this statue that Praxiteles did of her, a sculpture, was the first time that a woman had been portrayed in a nude. And so this sculpture was actually, commissioned, supposedly, Aphrodite. Aphrodite is Venus in Roman, but it caused quite a stir at the time. And when the city council saw this, they weren't ready to put this up in their government patio. So instead, Praxiteles, he, donated, dedicated this statue, this nude statue of Aphrodite, that's really, Phryne, to the Apollo oracle at Delphi, where it stayed for a very long time until a Roman general ran off with her. But, back to Phryne's time, she had made enough money, so she had another sculpture made of her. And she herself donated that sculpture to Delphi. And this is to replicate that sculpture, which has survived and which is known to be in the Vatican. So there she is. So the idea here is showing other things of women. Sometimes they're in the history and herstory, and this is a way that I can bring together aspects, of the women of the ancient Mediterranean. If we look down here at this amphora, I've showed it before, is very noteworthy because I was able to recognize that this first figure, she's holding a lyre. And she is the most famous poetess, Sappho, and holding the lyre. The poets, used the lyre and they sang, poems like that. And so our word, lyric, lyric poetry has derived from that. It could be, and I've recognized this because she's been figured on another vase with her name in Greek. And this one may be her protege. That's Damophila, and she's playing a tambourine or a tambora or something like that by hand. And the third figure is a woman dancing in that Greek style with her arms upraised there. Now, this is relatively rare, this amphora, because everything about it painted on a white ground. And this was basically from about 425 to 450 to have this kind of artistic freedom, and here very much, showing women, and albeit a very, very famous poetess in that way. If I can just kind of look over here to this replica of a Greek sculpture, or in relief, is a picture of a young woman who is playing a pipe, or pipes like this. These pipes were made of sycamore wood. They actually had a reed in it, and it is said the sound of it is like a modern day oboe, is how that would sound. So very many women were very noted for playing this pipe, or a flute, someone might say, might call it that. Also, want to come over here and look at this figure. Now this figure looks very modern, but it's like around 3,000 to 4,000 years old. This is a museum replica, and it's known as a Cyclades sculpture. The Cyclades Islands lie, kind of south of the Greek landmass like that. Cyclades really means circle, and that is that the islands look like a string, a necklace. They look like a necklace. There's several of them, 30 to 40 of them, like that. And they also, the rock there is marble. And so these sculptures of a female body, there are variations that still stay very much close to the same style and different sizes. Some of them are very white and some of them are a little discolored, it seems, from being buried in the ground like that. So it's interesting that it looks very modern. I don't know how many have been found, quite a few. What they're about, well, nobody can say. But significantly related is that in the Cyclades there are a number of important islands. One of them is Delos, and Delos is given as the birthplace of Artemis and Apollo. Also, to look at this stone here, this is, you know, a natural marble stone. The very early ones of these images of the Cyclades, always female, really began much more like this. This particular one is actually from eastern California, from a site known as Swansea. It is dedicated to the Celtic god Lugh. And the location there is a huge marble bluff coming out of the hillside. And on this marble bluff has been carved, who knows how long ago, the zodiac as it is known in the ancient Mediterranean. And as I have put red on it, some of these figures also have showed, you know, residue of red. However it was applied, it kind of goes with it. So there you can see that these things are all related here. And I think from the idea of Delos being the birthplace of Apollo, we can come over here to this picture is of a statue. It's a full-size statue of Apollo from a couple thousand years ago or more, like that. And what's significant here today, beginning of August 6th through into September, is the feast of Apollo. And also I have the scallop shell, which is also a symbol of Cancer, since he also has sanctuaries in the house of Cancer as well as in the house of Leo. He is really a pre-Greek deity, if we want to grant him a deity, and he is at the same time the Celtic Lugh. The Isle of Lewis is named after him, and so forth. So there is a relation of that, and the Mediterranean people seem to recognize that he's also a Hyperborean, meaning beyond the north wind. And so he was seen as a deity that, you know, periodically came to the Mediterranean and left northward, and they had a whole system actually relating offerings, you know, from the Mediterranean all the way up to the British Isles. So in the Irish legends have it that various of the people who have inhabited the British Isles, and particularly Ireland, have originated in the Mediterranean. So Lugh and Apollo are, if not the same, they are closely related. So you can see how these things are connected. And here's a figure of a crane. So Robert Graves in The White Goddess has revised or replicated one of the, or actually two of the ancient, we kind of call them calendars. The Book of Ballymote is an ancient Celtic book that has like cataloged the ancient ways of writing, the Celtic ways of writing, known as Ogam, and like that. So in this particular, he is revising, that is, you know, replicated it, the calendar of the birds, and also the call it the color Ogam, the bird Ogam and the color Ogam. And for this month, the month of August, corresponding to both the, feast of Apollo and the feast of, in the calendar, of the crane. So the crane. So in the Celtic language, crane is hór. So hór, and also the color Ogam has that it's brown. So this is a brown hór, like that. And so forth. Anyway, he's worked out, a wonderful way of comprehending this ancient relationship of, I would say, the Celtics and the Mediterranean have all that, in it. Here, this is my drawing. And my drawing is Bira. Bira means heroine. And she denotes a courageous woman who has undertaken the challenges of the sacred path with its primal explorations and unconventional values. She's also the knowledge bearer. She has knowledge of magic and ritual and martial arts. So she's also called Vidyadharini. And this is my expression of her in that way. Take all that in. We go over here to this is a wonderful picture here, her portrait. Now this is a woman in India, and she could be any time. She could be any time. Who knows? Thousands of years ago or yesterday, like that. So she would be a priestess or a devotee, certainly of any one of the many goddesses. So in India, everything has still continued in the feminine, where it has totally disappeared from the Mediterranean. And within all of these, there are various sectors. There are really different kinds of groups of people in India, a huge country, and some of them are called tribal people, and they definitely have a non-Hindu view favoring the woman, and so forth. And you can see the resemblance of her, this Indian woman, to this 3,000 or 4,000, this portrait is coming from Crete, 3,000 or 4,000-year-old portrait of a priestess in Crete. How similar they are, their curls and their jewels and so forth. Oh, and that's why I should, go back up to my drawing here with the braid. I noticed that the single braid was also, I don't know what you'd say, a particular sign of the woman warrior, the dakinis or yogis, also on some of the cult statues, definitely of whoever the goddess is, also that she has this single braid. So I'm emphasizing that in this relationship that I'm showing here of all of the ways of the woman, of woman's culture, woman's herstory. So we can look here at this figure here I've showed before. This is to say matrika, and the way I'm picturing it here, this is actually the Sanskrit letter for ma for matrika, and I put the head of a woman in there, a Greek woman, exactly. And so this is very, very significant in all that. So keep your eye on that. Who is Matrika? She is called Matrika because she is not known, or she is not understood, and her mystery is not yet realized. When she's unknown or not understood, she impels women towards all kinds of worldly activities and feelings. When she is known, as when she is realized, her saving power is realized. She leads the woman to liberation. She also brings about knowledge in a limited form, such as, I am imperfect, I am thin, or I am fat. By the penetration of such thoughts in the mind of the woman, they bring on feelings of sorrow, pride, joy, passion. And because she is the basis of this kind of limited knowledge, the woman is deprived of the investigation of the inner her sense. and all the woman's knowledge is outward turned, without ceasing. She, the limited and empirical person, is being deprived of the knowledge of her essential self, matrika. Now to really continue with that theme that I've just gone through, I would like to have the honor to read a poem. This is from Claudia's book, Stunned into Awakening, Worldwide Women's March of January 21st, 2017. Oh, Claudia has put together this wonderful illustrated book with photos and poems of various women and herself in this. And this one in particular is a friend of Claudia's, is Dr. Catherine Harrison. And so I feel honored to read her poem in this context. She titles it A Line. Inside lies a divide, a mental line, ephemeral but constant. On one side, arguments rage unceasingly, rarely friendly or productive. The other, waterfall and a warm breeze. What love would feel like if nature were love, sensation mixed with elixir of consciousness. From this side, I hear the arguments, but pay them little heed. At times they recede, leave only the rush and rustlings of love. And how do I step from one to the other? Accident? Mystery? Siren call of the spiritual path, ritual, practice, which, I'm told, does not actually exist. There is just this line that, while not easily crossed, is crossable always and always and always.